Good afternoon. Welcome to ComSpark. We are in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm joined here with Dr. R. Michael Townsend from Ohio State, CIO of multiple of the areas of the Cancer Center. So if you can maybe shed some light on all those roles that you kind of incorporate.
Sure. So the cancer program, as we call it at the university, is a combination of both the research and the clinical side of the house. And there are three actual parts to my title, which is the CIO of the OSU Comprehensive Cancer Center, the Ohio State University Comprehensive Cancer Center, the Richard J. Solove Research Institute, and the Arthur G. James Cancer Hospital. So the CCC, Comprehensive Cancer Center, is our research arm, and the hospital office is our treatment arm. And the aspects of being able to do research within the hospital complex is kind of like how the Solove Research Institute came about. The university, of course, is an incredibly complicated place. Our cancer center, which is one of the NCI designated, it's the National Cancer Institute, which is a big part of the NIH. There are 70 cancer centers in the United States. Only 50 of them are comprehensive.
Okay.
And the comprehensive ones actually have to handle not only a research and clinical, but also community outreach, population work, et cetera. And so we have members in 11 of the 14 colleges on campus. So it's actually really kind of spread, although most of the activity that's seen by people in the outside world, obviously, is what's being done at the James, our cancer treatment hospital. It's a freestanding, 21-story hospital, rather substantial building.
Yeah, definitely a pretty lengthy title, right? Which
Yeah.
obviously you are more comfortable with at this point. With such a diverse community comes, how do you handle concerns and how do you outreach with all the different areas you cover?
So like this interview, I guess, it's really about communication,
Yeah.
right? We have to make sure that we're actually not only providing information to people through the activities that we have to do in the Comprehensive Cancer Center, but also we have to get information back from people so we know what direction to take. The interplay between the research areas and the clinical areas is probably best depicted between those two entities because, the classic bench to bedside and back is really what we do. We develop new treatment modalities within the research area through basic research and then put those into practice. We're a phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials center, one of only 4 in the nation. And so we put patients through
Right.
that are not going to have other types of treatments available to them. But the research side is very important to us too. In fact, all of our clinicians are required to do research even if they only do clinical trials. And we do a lot of clinical trials. We're a phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials center. And about 26% or so of our patients are actually on clinical trials, which is far and above the national average. That's 1 of every 4, roughly.
Right.
In our last core grant, I should say, when we submitted last was 2015, it's due again in 2020, so it's coming up real soon. That was the actual percentage for the 5 years, which is astounding, considering I think the national average is 4%.
So obviously with so much on your plate and covering such a large spectrum, are there any concerns or technical hurdles that you're facing currently or that you see in the next year or 2 years?
So technical is an interesting thing. A lot of in fact, in many places, businesses, places like us in healthcare, et cetera, the universities, are all looking at the same thing. Obviously security is a really big issue, as well as the changes in what we actually have to do and provide to people. With those changes and concern, and again, since we're a national center, we have to abide by rules and regulations that the NCI puts forth on the Comprehensive Cancer Center. And because of that, the tools and utilities and equipment and interactions and all of that has to change accordingly. So one of the problems we actually have literally is the personnel component, which I think everyone is kind of feeling. Columbus is growing really fast, and it's harder and harder to both find the right people and maintain them. So that's a serious concern. And at the same time, obviously, you can't produce environments, applications. I'm going to have an application development team, data systems analytics, operations type teams. Each of those has a grave concern about security because, one, we drum it into them, but two, we see the effects of not doing that, ransomware, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things that is also kind of challenging is, when and how do we actually go to something like cloud, right? I mean, we use the term cloud, but even if it's not cloud services, but it's a technology that's provided by a corporation that we use, let's say a commercial application, they may actually now provide that through, web interface, et cetera, as opposed to being an on-prem service. And how much of that do you trust? What about break-ins, breaches, et cetera? So security has become a really, really big concern. Unfortunately, it's not going to end anytime soon.
Yeah.
As it turns out, cancer is a really big target because it's probably one of the most costly items in healthcare. It's the echelon of where people are to produce new drugs. It's good for revenue flow down the road, but it's an industry that others want to actually be part of or would like our information on that. It turns out that our demographic and phenotypic data of patients is just as valuable. So we hear this all the time about people trying to get to PHI and the like, but the truth is, again, in cancer, if you have that information, you can actually use that through cohort discovery, et cetera, within it to actually maybe design new drugs and the like. And so it turns out the information is just as important as actually having the drug designs.
Well, yeah. Sounds like you definitely have your hands full, but it sounds like you have a good grasp.
And again, can we keep up with that technologically? How far back do we keep things?
Right.
I mean, you name it, whether it's email systems that we're now kind of slowly moving to the cloud, whether it's the enormous amount of data we have, genomic data and analysis of that. So we use a lot of tools and utilities to make all of this continue to move forward, which is important for the cancer program and obviously important for both the research and the treatment we give to our patients.
Yeah. Well, I very much appreciate you sharing, kind of what your next few years looks like there at, the cancer side, and appreciate, your time and sharing the details. And for more information, you guys can visit ComSpark.tech.